Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Marissa Kozlov. It's great to have you with us for today's eMarketer Tech Talk, where we host guests from all areas of media, ad tech, and MarTech. With today marking exactly 100 days until Christmas, our content focuses on the shopper's mindset during the 7 phases of the holiday season. And some new research from Intuit, Mailchimp, and Canvas 8 looks at key emotional drivers, spending patterns, and holiday shopping behavior to help brands plan, time, and tailor their holiday strategies for maximum impact. So now let's meet my guests. First, we have Jillian Ryan, Senior Manager of Content Marketing Strategy at Intuit Mailchimp, who's joining us today from New York. Hi, Jillian.
Hey, Marissa. Such a pleasure to be here.
I'm so happy you're with us today. And we also have Adriana Bolton, Associate Director of Insights at Canvas 8, who's joining us from London. Hi, Adriana.
Hi, Marissa. Excited to be here.
Really excited for today. Perfect timing with that 100-day marker. So we'd also are so excited to see all of you in our audience today. We'd love to know where you're all joining us from. So just drop that in the chat. And please know that you can also use the chat to send in any questions throughout today's session. The three of us will do our best to get to as many of those as we can during the live Q&A in the second part of the show. Jillian and Adriana have a great presentation planned for you today. Jillian, I'm going to pass it to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Marissa. We're really excited to share our latest research today because too often brands treat the holiday season like one big glittery block of time that stretches from October through January. But here's the thing, that's not really how consumers experience it. So this year, we're challenging marketers to start tuning in to customer mindsets. Shoppers today are making decisions at all kinds of micro moments throughout the season, and they're attaching very different emotions to their purchases along the way. Now, inside these moments are opportunity audiences that many marketers are still overlooking. So, this leads us to the golden question that we'll be tackling today. During the most emotionally charged time of the year, how do we meet customers where they are, physically, emotionally, and culturally? To deep dive into this question, we partnered with Canvas 8, a strategic insights consultancy, to do in-depth research and go straight to the source. So, Adriana, why don't you walk us through our methodology?
Cheers, Jillian. So, to answer that golden question, we asked over 9,000 shoppers worldwide about their spending habits, who they were buying for, and about their participation in global and regional holidays. And then after that, we spoke with 9 experts across the UK, the US, and Australia to uncover how cultural cues, customs, and rituals are shaping consumer behavior during the holiday season. And to make sure these insights didn't just die in a deck, we teamed up with Tom Fishburne, aka Marcartoonist, who I'm sure you've seen his cartoons all over your LinkedIn feed. And we really brought this research to life with a little comedic relief.
Yeah, so get ready. We are about to completely transform your view of the holiday season. We'll map out distinct phases and opportunity audiences so that you can connect with customers in the moments that really matter.
Alrighty, so to kick things off, let's unpack how the holiday season really looks to shoppers. People not only feel and act very differently between October and January, right? But there is also an ebb and flow in consumer spending throughout the season. And because of this ebb and flow, we ultimately defined 7 pretty distinct phases in the holiday season, which is precisely what you're seeing on the graph here. This up and down paints a hugely nuanced picture of the season and demonstrates that there is really so much more to this festive period than that one big glittery block of time.
Right? And because shoppers come to each of these phases with a very different headspace, it's really important for marketers to show up with messages that will resonate with those consumers, because that is what will actually drive clicks and also purchases.
That's so right. And so for each of the 7 phases, we're about to take you through what shoppers are thinking, how they're feeling, and when they're buying. But the real trick to standing out this holiday season will be spotting the segments that are ripe and ready to spend within each phase. So we will highlight these opportunity audiences, or archetypes, if you wish, along the way, and we'll share practical ways for how you can meaningfully engage with them. especially since some shoppers actually might embody more than one of these archetypes as the season evolves. So, with that, over to you, Jillian.
Yeah, so let's dive into our first phase, the early lead up. This phase happens in October and is defined by when the first holiday cheer starts hitting the shelves or hitting inboxes. Now, it might just be me, but it's starting to feel like it's happening earlier and earlier every year.
Right? I know. I've honestly seen several Christmas ads here in the UK in the last week. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we gave this phase a little loving nickname, which really describes the overarching consumer sentiment. Too soon for comfort. Most people, although not all, are just not ready for menorahs or Santa just yet.
That's right. And, across the globe, shoppers are mostly spending during this phase for cultural events like Halloween or Canadian Thanksgiving. However, Amazon Prime's Big Deal Days, which typically occur in early to mid October every year, are gaining a huge amount of traction in the US, with 29% of shoppers making a purchase. And this is all by design from Amazon. These Prime Big Deal Days were intentionally created to kick off the holiday season. And what's really interesting is that the success of Prime Big Deal Days is a big signifier of a critical opportunity to watch during this phase. The gift giving lifers, the type A people who thrive on being prepared. They're the ones who are at your Halloween party, clinking glasses with you, bragging that they have already finished their holiday shopping.
Oh, to be that prepared. And for marketers, these gift giving lifers are really a huge, but I think often missed opportunity. To capture them, it's really about positioning early holiday shopping as a savvy move rather than as a frenzy. And that's how you really need to be positioning your messaging in any emails or SMS messages that are going out to this audience during this phase. And it's also not necessarily about deep discounts. That's not really what motivates this archetype. They really get that satisfaction of saying that they're done early. So to win them over, it's really time to rethink your October game plan. And while, of course, you should have some comms and promotions around Halloween or Canadian Thanksgiving, as our data showed, these are still key shopping moments during this phase. But our research found that it can be hugely advantageous for marketers to focus on the third of shoppers who are already in the holiday state of mind. This will help you capture those early sales that competitors might be missing out on. So the gift giving lifers are really such an easy and also early win, right?
Totally. And with that, let's move into our second phase, which we've termed pre peak sales. And this is the phase when shoppers are beginning to feel more festive or are getting in the mood, right? The arrival of holiday movies and music in early to mid November definitely has a role to play here. Shout out to you, Mariah Carey, who inaugurates this phase every year.
The moment she pops up on my Instagram feed, I know it's time. Now, on this slide, you'll see the top three shopping moments in this phase. We have Guy Fawkes Night in the UK, which drove 20% of shoppers in that region to make a purchase, Click Frenzy in Australia, and Veterans Day in the US. And when I look at this data, what it tells me is that there are a lot of regional traditions that are taking place during this time. People are connecting locally and they're starting to cultivate that holiday feeling to get in the mood, as Adriana said. But you're probably asking who's really buying during this time, especially because we know that the gift giving lifers they're already done, right? So who's that opportunity audience?
Yeah, so what we found was that with, the Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales just around the corner, many shoppers are in fact waiting to pull the trigger. But for one particular audience, this phase marks the start of their slow-paced and really enjoyment-driven holiday purchasing.
Yep. So time to meet the joyful gifters. They're motivated by nostalgia and the joy that's attached to the season. They're really driven by the meaning behind the holidays, which is connecting with their loved ones, connecting with their family. And our research found that this audience is likely to be parents or grandparents. They're not chasing discounts, right? But they're really focused on seeing the little faces light up when they unbox that perfect gift.
So, what you're really saying is the key opportunity is to capture this nostalgic bunch by pulling on their heartstrings. So wholesome.
Yep.
I love that.
Yeah, pulling on those heartstrings. And for marketers, that's where it's really about leaning into storytelling, leaning into the seasonal sensory cues, like colors, for example, that might instantly signal that the holidays are upon us. And the goal here is to help shoppers discover the products that will create lasting family memories. That's really what they're after. Now, social proof, so things like customer reviews or user generated content can be a powerful way to show how others have connected with your brands or enjoyed the products that your business sells. So now is the time to shape your messaging, shape your creative around the joy that they can create when they give a gift from your company. And I think, thinking about email and SMS, subject lines and copies should be focused on the satisfaction of finding the perfect gift and not really just be functional in nature. So a generic top 10 gift list isn't going to resonate with this audience.
So true. I really love that advice. That switch between the functional and the emotional is so critical in winning over this cohort. But moving on from this wholesome archetype, let's talk about our third phase, which is peak sales. And though it is a short one, it is the second busiest phase of the season in the latter half of November. So with Thanksgiving, Black Friday, and Cyber Monday driving majority of the purchases during this phase, I think what's really interesting actually is how much bigger Black Friday is than Cyber Monday across the globe. We have 75% of shoppers globally purchasing for Black Friday, but only 37% pull the trigger for Cyber Monday. Super interesting.
Yeah, I think when we got the data back from this research, this was one of the findings that really, really surprised me. But the more, we analyzed the data, we really saw that it's a hidden opportunity, right, for marketers.
Totally. And, I think though, borderline, I think the biggest takeaway from this phase is that people are buying, and amidst this purchasing frenzy, there is actually one standout audience.
Yep. Enter the discount devotees. And while most people do enjoy saving a little bit of money during a sale, these people truly get a thrill out of finding the ultimate discount. They do not like paying full price for anything. And in fact, we found that they build their shopping lists for these sales, for this moment throughout the entire year.
So true. And I think that distinction is critical. We all love a deal, but for the discount devotees, this is their MO. So to capture them, it will take more than just a BF20 code when the time comes. You have to create a sense of reward, of urgency, and really think about that strategy ahead of time. They need to feel like they're getting a deal that's personalized to them and to their circumstances. So, whether that's a drop strategy or a unique discount.
Yeah, and I think a caution here is really getting that discount strategy right, getting your sales strategy right. That's what's going to be critical for success. And you don't want to over discount. It could be really tempting because you have this audience that's just waiting for a deal. But when you over discount, that's going to cut into your margins. And it also can potentially dilute your brand, dilute the value of your product. So to capture the discount devotees, it's really about tailored promotions. Think about how you can treat them like a VIP, offering some sort of exclusive discount. And the amazing part is that once you capture the discount devotee, they're going to feel that satisfaction of the deal, and they're more likely to become a brand loyalist and a dedicated subscriber over time. So they'll always be tapped into your deals.
That's so true. But with that, let's move on to our next phase because we're just about halfway through.
Yep. Starting off in December, we have the festive phase, and this lasts right into the middle of the month, so mid-December. And it's a phase where everyone is truly starting to get into the spirit of the season, and particularly by participating in local traditions.
That's right. And, as you can see on the slide, regional moments are really dominating here. So, with the top three shopping opportunities being St. Nicholas Day in Benelux and Germany, as well as the Advent season across the world, Advent sales in Scandinavia are also a big draw. But, what does that mean for who are the ones to watch during this time?
Yeah. So they are called the curators. And for them, it's about finding a gift with a really good story. They're the type of people who will hunt down a really bespoke handmade item from an independent business or try to find a gift that aligns with their values or the recipient's values, a gift that gives back. They are a little bit similar to the joyful gifters in that they love seeing that happy face unwrap the present. But I think a distinction here is that it's actually the process of finding the gift itself that is what's bringing them joy. So they take a lot of pride in saying, I found this gift and I found it especially for you.
I mean, admittedly, this is definitely me. My Pinterest searches are borderline obsessive, and I actively hunt down gifts every season for people where I can say, it's from this super cute little brand that I found while I was at the gallery a few weeks ago. Ridiculous, I know, but turns out there are actually a lot of us. So, to win us over, marketers need to go beyond the practical. And as curators, we really see brands as collaborators. So we'll respond best to messaging that makes a product and a brand feel special. And, it helps us create lasting memories with or for the recipient.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely not a curator, but I do know one or two people who might relate to the archetype in our next phase, and that is the last minute sprint. So, that mid-December rush when everyone is trying to get everything sorted before those observational days is a very busy time. 16% of global shoppers are buying on Saturday, 52% on Christmas Eve itself. So it's very clear that there's a group of people who are scrambling to get their gifts and their shopping completed, the last minute listers.
Yes, and for the last minute listers, the panic is really setting in. These people have lots of gifts still to buy, and to be honest, they're willing to do whatever it takes to get them. And that means shopping anywhere that can help them cross that finish line.
Yeah. So for marketers, the last minute listers really call for intervention mode. That should be the thesis behind your planning for this phase. Think about SMS, right? This is a low friction way to deliver immediate solutions to your customer. You will literally end up in the palm of their hand. So think about what you can offer them. Is it a gift wrapping service? Is it guaranteed same day delivery? I think the moral here is that anything that your business can do to make it easier for these people is something that you should pursue because solving their anxiety is really the best way to capture their holiday shopping dollars, right?
100%. But, what comes after this holiday rush? You'd think nice relaxation, downtime, decompression, but not quite. Let's talk through our next phase, which is called Betwixtmas. And it's those days between the big celebrations and the lead up to New Year's, which are actually buzzing with shopping activity, especially in the UK, Australia, and Canada, where shoppers are going all out for Boxing Day. And in Australia, they're taking part in Click Frenzy.
Yeah, but I think there's a really interesting twist that we find here with our archetype, right? Because this is the phase when a big group of shoppers are actually starting to treat themselves. So for marketers, these are the self-gifters, and they're really a golden opportunity. They're looking for the gift that they didn't get. They're looking to indulge. And our research found that non-parents in particular are more likely to fall into this group. To put a number on it, non-parents are 17% more likely than parents to buy a gift for themselves during this phase.
I mean, as the parent of a 2-year-old, can confirm, just wishing no time to buy. But let's talk about how to reach these self-gifters, because you need to really tap into a me first mindset, and messaging should celebrate this idea that they've earned this. This is an indulgence. And this is a great opportunity for marketers to highlight limited time offers or exclusive perks and really make that indulging feel even more gratifying.
And speaking of gratifying, I mean, this is one of my favorite cartoons from Marketoon, right? Just so relatable. And for marketers, it's also a time to really think about what you can do tactically. So, firing abandoned cart emails, right? Reminding customers who might have browsed earlier in the season that something is back in stock, right? The messaging should really be focused on that gratifying feeling of buying yourself what you really wanted. And now I can't believe it, Adriana, but we're on to our seventh phase. We've almost made it to January. So this is the period between New Year's Eve and early January. And it's really characterized by a sense of renewal and a forward-looking mindset. Now, despite the fact that purchases are largely driven by sales events, with 60% of shoppers buying during January sales in the UK and in Scandinavia, and 58% of shoppers across Benelux, Germany, Italy, and Spain buying for winter sales, there is actually one audience that particularly shines through. And they're using these sales as an opportunity to power their fresh start.
That's right. And we want to introduce you to our final archetype, the self-improvers. And these shoppers are using January sales to invest in their goals and self-care, like picking up fresh activewear to kick off new fitness plans, for example. The self-improvers are especially likely to be non-parents, with 65% of non-parents buying for themselves during this time versus 57% of parents. And interestingly, this group is also more likely to be women, with 63% of women who are self-gifting compared to only 55% of men. And lastly, perhaps most interestingly, we also see an increased prevalence for this archetype across the Benelux and Germany regions, as well as in Italy and in Spain.
Yeah. So for marketers, I think the opportunity here is to really capitalize on this idea of a fresh start. That is the mindset that these consumers are in. So it's tapping into that desire for conquering their resolutions and preparing for the year ahead. And as you think about your comms during this period, it should really be tailored to goal setting. But it's not just about the messages here. I think there's a really important point about cadence and frequency. So your messages should come at a slower pace. That's the mindset that consumers are in. They just spent the whole holiday season being a little bit overwhelmed, and they're just easing into the new year. So you can ease into their inbox with a slower cadence during this time.
Love that, easing into your inbox. But that's a wrap on our 7 phases. We made it, Jillian.
We did, but we're not done yet. We have some more to go through, and we are aware that we went through a lot of insights, and we know for marketers who might be a little overwhelmed with the season ahead, it might be tempting or easy to say it's too much and just default your holiday strategy to the basic fill in the blank version of personalization that you can see in the Marketoonist cartoon on this slide. But we at Mailchimp know that that isn't what wins long term. So whether you're refining the final touches on your holiday strategy or just getting started now, our research also revealed 4 key and very actionable takeaways. They're listed on the slide right here. So start early, be agile, and follow the data. Think about your omni-channel mix, all the channels at your disposal. Think about rooting your approach in regionality. And also make sure that you're celebrating in an authentic way. Celebrate the way that your audience does. So these first two takeaways are highly tactical. The next two might be a little bit more conceptual, and we're going to walk through all four of them. And keep in mind, it's about striking the balance that's needed to answer the crucial question that we named at the start of this webinar, which is how can you meet your customers where they are physically, emotionally, and culturally? So let's dive into that first takeaway.
Brilliant. So, yeah, I just want to reiterate that this is really about starting early, being agile, and following the data. So, think about all of those opportunity audiences that we just pulled out. To really win with all of them, planning needs to start in September at the latest, i.e., now. And, as one of our experts stated, Mark Bartzi, if you wait too long, it is really likely that your execution will be poor and your revenue will suffer. And what's more is that marketers need to plan for what happens once campaigns are live. So real-time responsiveness can make or break during these moments. And it's critical to use live data to inform the decisions that you're making while these campaigns are in action. So whether that means adjusting email send times based on engagement, for example, or dynamically segmenting audiences based on their behaviors, real success in this phase and throughout the whole holiday season will really come down to getting that balance between proactive planning and real-time reactivity.
Yeah, completely. And I think that's such a nice segue to our second takeaway. These two really go hand in hand. And that's this notion that you need to be thinking full funnel. You need to be thinking omni-channel as you reach shoppers this holiday season. And not all channels serve the same purpose, right? We saw the ebb and flow. We saw that timing and context are really everything. So early in the season, email is a really powerful tool for seeding ideas, for staying top of mind with customers. It's a channel that has a great capacity for storytelling, for visual inspiration through compelling creative. And that's what makes it ideal for nurturing intent and for highlighting all the great products that your company offers, especially for those organized early birds, right, that we talked about. And then as the intensity picks up and we get to those two peaks in the ebb and flow chart, that's where there's a lot of urgency and SMS and messaging. So think about WhatsApp, right? They become really key here. There's an immediacy with those channels that make them perfect for, a last minute limited time offer or a restock alert, because that's when customers need to act fast. That's when stress is high. So SMS is really a more immediate channel. And I think as you think about email and as you think about SMS, segmentation is really key. You should not be blasting the same message to everybody on your list. It's really about tailoring your campaigns and using the demographic data that you have, using the behavioral insights that you have so that your messages are hitting the right audience at the right time. And you could also use automations and flows that will also help you deliver ready to go omni-channel campaigns. And that could be everything from a post-purchase transactional message so that shoppers actually have their order confirmation, they know the shipping details, or you can use it to re-engage lapsed subscribers with timely offers or inspiring stories. So across all channels, there's a lot of opportunity, and it's really not being singular, but thinking of all of the tools in your toolkit.
Amazing. And, speaking of segmentation, our third takeaway is really rooted in that as well, which is rooting your approach in regionality, because the holiday season is definitely not a one size fits all experience, especially when it comes to how people actually celebrate across the globe. So to really hammer this home, we broke down all of the top moments throughout the holiday season globally in a heat map where you can see the degree of variance in engagement across locations. And moments that are huge shopping opportunities in the US may really not be big in Spain or in the UK, for example. And on top of this, it's really imperative for marketers to think beyond just Christmas. Even though Epiphany in the US only draws in 4% of shoppers, in Spain, it's 77%. So on top of that, globally, 2% of shoppers buy for Hanukkah and 1% for Kwanzaa. But in the US, that rises to 4% for Hanukkah and 2% for Kwanzaa. So again, a really big rise regionally there too. And these regional and cultural nuances are critical to standing out during this crowded holiday season. And carrying on from this sentiment, I want to talk about our final takeaway, which follows suit from the third one, which is to celebrate the way that your audience does. With so many moments happening across the season, from Diwali to Hanukkah, Christmas, and Kwanzaa, it can be really tempting to create broad brush blanket campaigns in the name of inclusivity, actually. But this approach often falls flat, or worse, it can really offend and cause a nightmare for the PR teams. So, using vague symbols or colors without context is not just ineffective, it risks really alienating your audience and making it not for a great turnout during the campaign. So instead, opt for thoughtful, culturally informed campaigns that center in on the meaning behind them. And at the end of the day, authenticity and insight will always outperform generic gestures.
Yeah, thanks, Adriana. And with that, before we head to Q&A, we actually have a super valuable gift for all of you. It will be your comprehensive go-to planning tool for the season. So introducing the gift giving roadmap, which you'll see on the slide. And I know there's a lot on that slide, but don't worry. We have this full framework available for download in the resource tab, and you can find it within our full holiday shopping unwrapped report. So you can reference after this webinar. As marketers ourselves, we know the holiday season can feel daunting. Shoppers are juggling events and gifts and deals, and it's on us, it's on marketers to meet them where they are. So that is why we mapped out all of the phases of the season, the different opportunity audiences, the actions that you should pursue, and then tied it all back to those 4 takeaways. The holidays may be complex, but with the right mix of insight, timing, and thoughtful connection, you can meet shoppers in the moment and make every interaction feel personal and memorable. To learn more about how Mailchimp can help you drive results this holiday season, use the QR code on the screen. We'd love to have a consultative conversation with you. So it might be a little early, but I'll say happy holidays and more timely, happy marketing. And Marissa, passing it back to you so we can get into some audience questions.
Thanks. Well, happy holidays and happy marketing to you too. That was such great content today, Jillian, Adriana. Thank you so much. I so enjoyed hearing all of those details around those phases of the holiday season. I feel like you both shared so many great strategies for marketers on ways to engage with all of those different audiences. I mean, I would actually love to hear from our viewers today in the chat. Which audience profile do you think you fall into? Mm-hmm. Jillian, funny enough, I think I'm falling into the profile that you actually said you weren't, the curator profile. So I guess we're complete opposites on that. Adriana, I'm not sure, which one do you think you fall into?
I am definitely a curator. So
you are.
I hear you, Marissa.
I know. Sometimes I'll see things months in advance, and I always feel like I never know what to get anyone. So I feel like if I see something, it doesn't matter what time of year it is, I'll take it, I'll hide it under the bed and keep it for the holidays.
I love it.
All right, so we have got quite a few questions, so let's get right to the Q&A. Adriana, the first question I have for you, should marketers be trying to capture all opportunity audiences or just go after 1 or 2? How should they prioritize?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question and so interesting, because when we were thinking about this research and what we uncovered actually specifically aligned to answer this question, because when we surfaced all of these different audiences in each of these phases, what we, again, were paying attention to was, were they actually primed to spend during that phase? And our research said yes. And it says that, these archetypes are really defined by their behaviors and their data. So, for example, we mentioned that certain opportunity audiences like the joyful gifters or the self-improvers, are built on clear demographic and behavioral indicators that will help you identify them. So, for example, the joyful gifters being older audiences who are, maybe less likely to buy on sale, who might offer or who might, for example, often be buying for younger audiences like their grandchildren. You can actually pick out these audiences within these different phases. And again, these people are primed to spend in all of these different places. But with that, we also notice that these archetypes can actually be the same person in some of these different phases too. So, again, I was a curator, but I also potentially could see myself as a self-improver. The curators and the self-improvers might actually be the same person. And I think identifying these shoppers will be about understanding their behavior and, particularly their browsing behavior or their buying history. But it is really important that you think about all of them, right? Because again, to maximize spending throughout the whole season, that's really what this research is about, is unlocking that hidden spend at every different part of or all of these different phases. So, for how to actually surface those different audiences, I think I'll throw to Jillian because she has some really great, tools and I think advice as to how to find these audiences and make them discoverable.
Yeah. Thanks, Adriana, for priming us with some research there. I think it's really about thinking about how you can plan messaging strategies that's tailored to these behaviors, right? And to the demographic details within the various archetypes. So to me, it starts with leaning on your customer data, right? You need to create segments, and then you also need to create tailored automated flows that are designed for each of those segments. And there's a lot of different ways in there. You can do it, with the demographic data, for example, but it's also possible to do it by country because we know that spending propensity is different by each market. So if you're a cross-border commerce business selling into multiple markets, you should have different email segments for each of those markets because, as we said, the folks in Spain are buying for Epiphany, but those in the US aren't, for example. So I really think it's about shoring up your customer data. That's where I would start. And if you're starting early, if you're starting now, you have time to get your house in order. I think there's two main levers that you could implement now to get your customer data ready to create these segments. So the first are integrations. They're really powerful here. And at a bare minimum, your e-commerce platform needs to be connected to your messaging platform. That's going to give you the richest customer data set possible, especially so you can rely on purchase data that can help you build segments. And then additionally, if you aren't using pop-up forms on your site to capture customer data, I think that's a really big missed opportunity. If folks are coming to your website, but then they're bouncing off and you haven't collected any information about them, it's not possible to capture that opt-in. It's not possible for you to then market to them. And I think that's a great way to capture details on those discount devotees, offer them a solid offer code, offer them a deal. So now you have them on your list. I would say one other thing, just in terms of like tools here, is like obviously I'm talking about the potential of doing a lot of different messaging flows and a lot of different cadences for different segments, and that can create a scale issue. So this is where we recommend leveraging AI as an assistant, right? You can generate copy, you can generate creative, and we even have the ability to do that in the Mailchimp product. So it's directly embedded into our tools. And that data is trained on your data set, so your performance, but also your brand guidelines, which can take some of the lift off because we are talking about a lot of different types of messagings and campaigns here.
That's great. Well, thank you both for those insights. Actually, Jillian, we had a question come in about AI, which I actually think you just answered. So thanks for that without even knowing the question. Appreciate it. All right. So the next question, Jillian, I'll ask you first, but I think this is a great one for both of you. Are experiential and event-based gifts still sought after?
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, I think especially for, the curators that are looking to connect. And also, Adriana, remind me, what's the archetype in the I'm blanking on the name, the self-gifters? They would also love the opportunity to get an experience, right? If there's physical goods, I think that's a really big part of it. But more often than not, there's something about opening up a gift to a concert or even a donation, right? To an organization of choice that really inspires consumers. So I think that that's definitely part of what you could be marketing to consumers during the holiday season.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Jillian, another one for you. Oh, Adriana, did you want to comment on experiential gifts?
No, I think Jillian covered the bases on that one.
All right, great,
The
thank you.
joyful gifters.
That's
I just remembered what they're
okay.
called. There we go. The joyful gifters and the curators, I think, are really primed for those types of offers. Yeah.
All right, good to know the thoughts on those profiles. All right, Jillian, how can you make one and done shoppers into loyalists following the holiday season?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen at Mailchimp too that, roughly, I think roughly like 64% of customers that come during that Black Friday, Cyber Monday window are actually new customers that are coming to you. But then once you have them, they're now a loyal customer. They're on your list. They're opted in to your email, and you have the ability to, you know, build that relationship over time by adding value, by building your brand, and by also providing them with personalized experience. The more that they open your emails, the more they come to your website, the more you know about them. And so you don't just want to blast them and inundate them with messages. That's going to lead them to unsubscribing. So it's really about thinking about how your emails and how your campaigns can add value to your new subscribers. That's what's really going to drive loyalty over time.
All right, thank you. All right, so we have somebody who asked about how many shopping trips does somebody make during these phases? Do you, either one of you have any data about the number of shopping trips that consumers are taking through the phases? Basically thinking if live versus e-commerce is growing again, can we assume that store visits are also growing?
I mean, I can chime in here, not direct data in relation to that question, but I think particularly the store visit question is a very interesting component of something we surfaced towards actually in that last minute lister phase, where a lot of customers actually do not have any more trust in e-commerce towards the end of that phase because they're worried about delivery times or they're worried about not being able to kind of physically see and touch something. So there is actually a really interesting relationship between kind of how e-commerce functions during that phase versus how in-store functions during that phase in the kind of like last minute lead up to the observational days. But actually, I think there's a really powerful opportunity on both sides there to work in tandem. So again, if you are an e-commerce brand that has the capacity to, have 24-hour shipping or even local delivery, for example, I think there's a huge opportunity for you in those phases. And then ultimately, if you do have a bricks and mortar location, thinking about how to communicate that to customers in advance or with those channels like SMS or WhatsApp, where you can reach people very urgently and get that footfall in store and to really kind of capture those people who need to touch and feel and ask a bunch of questions with their holiday purchases.
Mm-hmm. Even click and collect, I think there is another great piece to make sure that your consumers are informed about. If you have a brick and mortar location, the ability to buy online and have something that's ready for you in store, potentially wrapped, right? Like that's another option that you need to make sure that you're communicating.
Both great points. Thank you for that. Jillian, how do I avoid fizzling out too early in the season if I start holiday activation in September? How do I keep this spark alive all the way up until the observational days, right? We have 100 days left. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, 100 days can seem like a really big calendar to fill, but I think that's exactly what we wanted to prove in this research, that so many brands are thinking about the holidays as just like a monolith and it's the same message and the same approach that they're using throughout all of it. So I think that when you take that approach, right, and you run out of unique things to say, that's what's going to lead to fatigue. It's going to lead to a disengaged audience, that dreaded unsubscribe that I mentioned earlier. But when you lean on this gift giving roadmap, right, that we showed earlier, and I know people only got a quick glance at it, but that it's really going to show you all of the ebb and flow throughout the season so you can create multi-layered campaigns that are honing in on each of those different mindsets and the different behaviors that consumers are going to experience throughout the next 4 months, right? And I think that's where it's also about leveraging the tools, leveraging the tech that you have. So that's segmentation, that's automation, because you also want to make sure that your audiences that have made a purchase already, for example, aren't being funneled through the same com paths by a person as the person who hasn't yet made a purchase, right? So it's being really intentional about what actions your audience have already taken and branching out different paths for them so that way they're not getting the same types of messages over time.
All right, thank you for that. We are going to take one more question. Adriana, you mentioned that Cyber Monday was half as big as Black Friday globally. What would you say might be a hidden opportunity to win Cyber Monday?
Yeah, I think this was, again, to Jillian's point, probably the most surprising part that came out of our research because we saw that Cyber Monday has the same purpose or function for customers as Black Friday, right? People are buying their gifts for other people. So again, to put a stat to this, 68% of shoppers are buying gifts for others on Black Friday, 67% are doing so on Cyber Monday. So again, exact same purchase intent on both days. But when we start digging deeper into who's actually buying, this is where it gets really interesting and starts surfacing some of these opportunities. So, this is when we found parents being especially active, with 71% of parents buying for others during Black Friday in comparison to only 63% of non-parents. And, beyond this, there's an additional opportunity that comes through when we look at this on a regional level. So, in the US and Canada, 54.6 and 54.1% of customers respectively made purchases during Cyber Monday. But when you look outside of North America, the UK and Germany are the closest following regions and, in third and fourth place, but only 39.9% and 38.3% of shoppers made purchases in those regions. And again, I think this is so interesting because you're seeing the exact same trend on Black Friday, where 75 to 80% of those populations are making purchases like the US and Canada, even though Thanksgiving does not exist in those places. So I think that what this really is saying is that why can't Cyber Monday just be equally as effective as Black Friday at driving sales? So in summary, I think there's kind of three opportunities here. The first one I would say is really about focusing on parents and those kind of discount devotees and the ones who aren't browsing during sales. They are executing, they're on a mission. So find those people and cater to them and think about the purpose of how, what Cyber Monday can serve for them. And secondly, if you are a global brand or you do ship worldwide, focusing on markets that are outside the US where Cyber Monday hasn't penetrated as much yet is a tremendous, opportunity for you. And thirdly, I would just say kind of maybe as a slightly tangential piece of advice, do the opposite of what's expected on Cyber Monday to stand out. So, perhaps instead of offering another sale, maybe you zero in on using Cyber Monday as a service opportunity, or maybe it's an add-on for people who bought on Black Friday. So, you could offer them free gift wrapping that the gifts they just bought on Black Friday can be wrapped in, or, exclusive add-ons that make them feel like they're special because they chose to shop with you on Black Friday in comparison to everybody else. So, yeah, in doing so, you may even upsell and improve brand sentiment simultaneously.
Those are great ideas. Thank you for sharing that. Well, and of course, thanks to both of you, Jillian and Adriana. This was so much fun to be with you both today. Thank you for so much great content. I know you have given all of us a lot to think about as we approach the next 100 days. And also thanks for answering the questions from our audience. It was really wonderful to have you both here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks, Marissa.
All right, so before we wrap up, I'm just going to take one moment to tell you about eMarketer's Media's channels. You can register for more analyst and tech talk webinars like this and subscribe to all of our newsletters at eMarketer.com. Listen to eMarketer's podcast for the latest insights and analysis. You can catch Behind the Numbers, Reimagining Retail, and the Banking and Payments Show on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And keep an eye on your email for the link to today's playback. And of course, feel free to contact us if you have any other questions. Thank you for your time. And thanks again to Jillian, Adriana, the team at Intuit Mailchimp, and the eMarketer studio behind the scenes for making this webinar possible. We'll see you all on the next Tech Talk.